Well, good afternoon, everybody, and this is a good day for New York City. I have great news to announce. We have reached a contract agreement with the Sergeants Benevolent Association, and now with this agreement, we have 4 contract agreements with our NYPD unions, 3 of which, as you know, have been ratified. This one with the sergeants will now go into the ratification process. It's an important step forward for 4,600 sergeants who do such important work for this city. I want to emphasize, and I have spent a long career in public service, including the years I spent as a council member, and the sergeants play a crucial role in keeping us safe. These are the frontline leaders in the battle to keep this city safe, and they do an extraordinary job. And I'm going to talk about some of the continued good news we're seeing in the statistics that prove the work of our sergeants. Before I go into that, though, I want to thank, of course, the leadership of the SBA, and you're going to hear from Ed Mullins in just a moment. I want to thank you for all the hard work, and this was a long journey and a lot of negotiation, but a very productive path. I want to thank you and your team for all you've done. I also want to thank, of course, the team that is responsible for all the labor contracts that have been achieved, and they just continue to do extraordinary work. Of course, our First Deputy Mayor, Tony Shores, our Labor Commissioner, Bob Lynn, and our Director of OMB, Dean Foulahan. They really have outdone themselves with the pace they have kept in terms of continuing to move forward on labor agreements. Now, to put in perspective the work that had to be done here to get to this agreement, you've got to start with the work the sergeants do. It is crucial, it is complicated, it is difficult, it is dangerous. It really underlies the safety and well-being of this city. We needed to figure out a way to address the reality of the work, to come up with something that was fair to the people who do the work, respectful to the people who do the work, but also fair and respectful to the taxpayers and protected the long-term interest of the taxpayers and our fiscal health. And that's what we have done here. Another labor deal that manages to strike that fair balance. The sergeants receive raises and benefits similar to the others with the contracts that we signed last year with the 3 other NYPD unions. There is the additional 1% raise in the first year. That was true of the captains, lieutenants, and detectives as well. It follows that pattern specifically. Contract also, as with all the other contracts that were struck with all the other unions, continues the unprecedented progress on guaranteed health care savings. And that, again, is so crucial because that's what's going to allow us to keep this city fiscally strong for the long term so we can keep the kind of robust workforce we need to do all the work that the city does, but the most important and crucial work of protecting our people. This is a city that believes fundamentally in the value of hard work. No one exemplifies that more than our sergeants. They have, again, an exceedingly difficult job, but unfortunately, for years, they had to do that job without a contract. And again, this was unfortunately a reality in the previous administration that so many hardworking municipal employees did not have a contract and were not given a productive opportunity to have a contract, and yet they soldiered on and they kept us safe. We have said for a long time that we wanted everyone under contract. We think our working people deserve that. We think the hard-working men and women of the SBA deserve to be under contract like all municipal employees. And if they're going to continue the work of the greatest police department in the world, it seems only fair that there would be a contract in place so they had those guarantees. Now, again, it all comes back to the work. It all comes back to the work, and you know the statistics for 2014, which were extraordinary. What the sergeants and the other men and women of the NYPD achieved, absolutely extraordinary, especially in comparison to the year 2013, which was considered by many to be a year of low crime that could never be beaten, yet it was beaten in so many ways in 2014. 2014, the lowest number of murders in our history since certainly at least 1963, and the lowest number of robberies and burglaries in decades. And crucially, and this particularly has to do with the work of the sergeants, reduced the average time to complete a full investigation by 40 days. So the NYPD is not only driving down crime, it's doing its work more effectively. More is being done with the workforce we have. Things are happening quicker and better, and that is to the great credit of the men and women of our police force. Very importantly, and you saw the preliminary mayor's management report come out earlier this week, very importantly, as crime is being driven down, there are key indicators about the relationship between police and community improving. I know this is something that Ed has talked about a lot, and I appreciate the work you're doing, I know not only locally but nationally, to talk about how to bring police and community closer together. This fact from the preliminary mayor's management report that we have a 25% reduction in complaints against police officers in the first 4 months of this fiscal year compared to the first 4 months of the previous fiscal year. 25% reduction in complaints against members of the NYPD. That is a very positive and, I think, very hopeful sign of where we are going. You know, we've talked about how important it is to get our people under contract because it's the right thing to do, because it's fair to the workforce. Again, it also is one of the things that determines our fiscal future. All of those rating agencies and monitors out there are looking for certainty and clarity. Every time we clarify further our labor situation, it puts the city in a stronger place for its future. I said in the beginning, I told Bob Lynn, get me to 50% of the workforce by the end of the year, and I will get you the gold medal. I said that would be an extraordinary achievement, very high bar. Well, with today's announcement, we are at 76% of the workforce that now will be under contract. And it's a great example of what can be achieved through dialogue and partnership and hard work, how we can get someplace better for everyone. Just a couple of quick words in Spanish, and then I'm going to make a few introductions of others to speak. Hoy hemos dado otro paso para mejorar las relaciones de la ciudad con los sindicatos de trabajadores. Este nuevo contrato laboral recompensa el duro trabajo de miles de sargentos de la policía y protege la salud financiera de la ciudad. With that, I want to introduce Ed Mullins. I have come to appreciate deeply in our conversations our ability to find common ground. Again, also appreciate what Ed is doing on the larger relationship between police and community. I think that is a very positive sign when leaders of our police unions work deeply with community leaders, clergy, and others. I want to thank you for that, Ed. Over 30 years ago, he swore an oath as a member of the NYPD. He has continued to serve and to lead over that time, and today is a great example of that leadership helping us all move forward together. Ladies and gentlemen, Ed Mullins. Thank
you. Good afternoon. I'd like to first thank our members of the SBA for their confidence and patience over these past 3.5 years of working with an expired contract. As you know, 3.5 years is a long time. I give a lot of credit to Mayor de Blasio for addressing this efficiently within the last year. We were able to find some common ground and move forward and meet the needs that are affecting our particular members. Bob Lynn, the Labor Commissioner, I think did a great job with us, kept me to the table many times when things just weren't going right. And Bob, I think you're doing a great job in that position. You know, Mayor de Blasio has said previously, we're able to find common ground. I'm appreciative of that. My members are appreciative. This has always been about the working person and their families, and I don't believe any one of us should ever lose sight of that. And to that, I thank you for that. So as we move forward, I'm sure you'll see a lot of happy sergeants out there and a workforce that will continue to do the important job of protecting this city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Dean and Bob, why don't you come up, because I'm sure we will have lots of questions. So we're going to take questions on this topic first, and then we'll go to off-topic. Dave.
Mayor, I know that you said that this is 76% of the city's workforce, the city hall workforce, but Because this is the Sergeants Union, and we all are well aware of that there's been some tension in the last couple of weeks, the significance of this, in your opinion, and also, Ed, you know the question's coming. I think you once called the mayor a nincompoop. So, what's changed?
I want to speak to that first.
Okay.
I've been called a lot worse. Well, I think the point of the significance is, first of all, the sergeants are a crucial element of the NYPD. And I think it moves us forward as a city to have more and more of the hardworking members of the NYPD under contract. I think, again, Ed is recognized as a leader, and the fact that we together have found common ground, I think, sends a very positive message about what can be achieved when people seek common ground. I think that's really the important point here. Our door is always open at City Hall. And people are going to have differences. It's New York City. I represent 8.4 million people who have 8.4 million different opinions. That is the New York tradition. But that doesn't mean we don't work together. I think this is a place where people have strong views and passions, and yet we find common ground. We're strong, we're resilient, we know how to come together and move forward. So I think what's crucial here is we've shown what cooperation can achieve. And we've shown that we're all in this together. And that, in fact, what binds us all is we want a better city and a safer city. The sergeants are doing an extraordinary job at keeping us safe. They deserve a good and fair contract. But as to the relationship, the more Ed and I have spent time together, the more we have found that common ground. I respect his leadership. I respect his intellect. I respect the fact that he raises serious issues in a serious way. And I think that's how people can find common ground, even if they don't agree on everything to begin with. That is the basis for finding common ground and actually getting to a productive place.
I think to answer your question, what's changed is a refocus of what's important, and that being the people of the city of New York. As you know, both the mayor and I had private conversation a while back, and we definitely have differences, and we have things that we do agree on. But the one thing that we agree on the most is that the city of New York, which I believe is the capital of the world, should not crumble. And it shouldn't crumble because of two people stomping their feet in the ground. We have to be mature enough and big boys enough to put priorities ahead. If we look back at Abraham Lincoln, who had a cabinet and team of rivals that was totally unable to work with each other, he foregone all the hostilities for the purpose of the nation. And I think that that's what's changed. It's for the purpose of the city of New York.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. Okay, you go ahead.
This is for Sergeant Mullins. If I understand it right, you basically took the deal that detectives, lieutenants, and captains took 3 months ago, but you didn't take it then. Why take it then?
The parameters of the deal, we needed to structure where it was important to our particular rank. Every rank is different. Every rank has different needs. There's different numbers of personnel within each rank. And through the work of negotiating those particular needs with Commissioner Lynn, we were able to address that for a deal that worked for our members.
And a question for Sergeant Mullins. So can you speak more about how your opinion of the mayor has changed? And do you still think that New York City is not safe enough to host a convention like the Democratic Convention if conventions come up in the future? Do you still have the opinion you had last summer that it's not safe enough?
What's changed with the relationship myself and the mayor is what I just said, is the purpose of what we do is about people. And when you're not sitting in the same room and it's clouded by other people's opinions and desires for their own specific needs, you don't get to discuss the real values of what's important. And what we were able to do was realize that the issues facing the city of New York are much more important than Mayor de Blasio and Sergeant Ed Mullins. And that unless we can find that common ground to move the city forward, and, you know, he has his job to do, I have my job to do, but most importantly, the people who travel about this city, whether you live here or reside here, they rely on what he does and what we do. And that changes things. As far as what takes place for crime in a convention, that ship sailed. It's no longer an issue.
In the future, assuming you always do
Well, I'm not a big convention guy. I don't attend birthday parties. So for conventions, it's a little bit out of my reach.
Excellent. Yes.
Your opinion on the mayor was clouded by other people's views. Could you just talk a little bit?
It's not so much other people's views. It's the politics that comes into play that I don't understand at certain times when the mayor is doing something because him and I didn't talk about it. Okay, he doesn't understand why I'm doing something because him and I didn't talk about it. But when you could sit down and understand what is taking place and agree to disagree or to find common ground on something that you can reason with, those issues, whether they're other people's opinions or issues, are able to be dissected, to be understood. And when you can understand the issue that's there, then you can understand the way an individual would think.
Do you feel that the mayor's issues with Pat Lynch impacted your relationship with the mayor at all? Is that what you're getting at?
I'm not even going to get into the mayor's relationship with Pat Lynch because I don't discuss that. I have family members I don't talk to, so I'm not going to get into the issue of Pat Lynch and the relationship with the mayor.
Mayor, back in December when tensions were a little bit tough with police, you said that a lot of it was because of union rhetoric having to do with contracts. Do you feel that today's agreement vindicates that view, what you put forward, which is that this may sound really bad, it may sound like we're not getting along with cops, but this has to do with contracts?
Look, I think 2 points. One, what matters is the ability to move forward. I know it is your job, and I respect it, to sort of take all the different quotes and moments in the past and try and rehash them and analyze them. I have to move forward. That's my job on behalf of the people, keep moving forward. I think Ed shares that view. So I'm not interested in talking about any specific quotes from the past. I'm interested in talking about the fact that we've come to an agreement. But I also think it's important to say that sometimes when people have differences and they state them, it obscures some of the underlying commonality. And I think that's the point that Ed made I agree with. There actually was, even when there were differences, there was a lot more that we could find in common. Everyone wants a safe city. I, for one, believe in our municipal workforce. That was not always the case in previous administrations, meaning I don't even think there was a philosophy of honoring, respecting, upholding the municipal workforce. I believe in our municipal workforce. I believe in the importance of labor unions in our society. I believe if you're going to talk about the tale of two cities, you're talking about all working men and women and trying to give them a fair outcome for their hard work. So that's really what was the most important thing in the end. Sometimes that got obscured by other differences, but now I think we're back on the most important topic.
Question for Sergeant Mullins. You mentioned Patrick Lynch. The PBA is now...
You mentioned Patrick Lynch.
The PBA is now the lone NYPD union without a contract. Did you discuss this deal with Mr. Lynch? Did you urge him to accept a similar deal?
No, Pat Lynch and I are good friends. Pat has a different membership, as I explained earlier. I have a different membership than detectives and lieutenants. This deal has been worked on in the wee hours of the night. We haven't had an opportunity to discuss. Pat is going to do what he believes is best for his members, as I do what's best for my members. And him and I will continue to remain close friends.
Mike?
Two questions. After the comptroller issued his report this week saying that he thinks the city has about 1.5, 1.6 billion more than you projected for FY15 and FY16, Pat Lynch said that that report demonstrates that the city has the money to give his members a better contract. So I'm looking for your response to that.
I could not be more clear and consistent, and I will restate because I appreciate the value of repetition. We have established a pattern. There's a uniform pattern, there's a civilian pattern. That is the only reality. We're not deviating from it, period. And I think the larger question of our fiscal future, I think you were here for our budget presentation. We believe there are a host of financial challenges ahead. As we speak, and it's particularly pertinent standing here with some of the people who protect us, as we speak, the Congress of the United States is on the verge of allowing the Department of Homeland Security to shut down. That is one of many, many examples where vitally needed resources for the city may not be available. We've talked the other day about the importance of the transportation bill, which is going to lapse in May, which has a $2 billion impact on this region. We have so many threats and uncertainties in terms of federal funding. There are huge question marks, obviously, in terms of state funding. And the economy itself, although seemingly good at this moment, so many people hurting, and the economy by no means a guarantee. So we are being very careful about our resources, and we're going to continue to be, because we've seen what happens in a downturn, how quickly the revenue collapses. But the pattern is now established. It's not moving.
Following up, I know that the PBA and the city have agreed to binding arbitration. Why hasn't an arbitration session actually taken place, and are there any discussions happening outside?
Before I bring up Bob Lynn, who deserves great accolades today, my point to all the unions in the now roughly 24% of our, representing 24% of the workforce that are not under contract or an agreement, is we welcome further dialogue. We always welcome dialogue. My door is open. Bob's door is open. It's up to each and every union to make their own choices. But as to the specific situation, let's get Bob up here.
Let me just say one thing before that. I really want to thank Ed and Bob Ganley for the work together that we did. I believe, and I've said this from the start of when I was appointed, the genius of collective bargaining is the ability of people to work at the table together on difficult problems and solving them in a collaborative and respectful way. That's what we've done with 76% of the workforce. That's what we just did in an extraordinarily important settlement with the sergeants, and I really appreciate the joint effort that we did. We've been saying to the PBA all along, we're ready to sit down, we're ready to try and find solutions to our problems, and we should do that. No dates have been scheduled for specific hearing dates yet. I imagine dates will be scheduled in the months to come.
Are there any discussions happening?
There are no discussions going on. We're working on dates for the arbitration.
This question is for Sergeant Mullins. Sergeant, you enumerated, or I should say you said that there are differences you have with the mayor. Can you enumerate those for us? What are they specifically?
What I'm highlighting is, and I'm not going to be specific because we're moving forward. What I'm highlighting is when there are differences, when you don't understand what another man is thinking and the reasons why he's thinking, those differences will be opposite of what your beliefs are and what your differences are. Him and I still have different beliefs in different areas. We have common beliefs in other areas. And until you sit at a table and have an opportunity to have an uninterrupted conversation, you don't get the ability to agree to disagree. And I think that's what's changed.
That's right. And I would say, you know, the important thing is in terms of when I agree with that entirely, and when you find some of the areas you agree on, we obviously agree on the crucial need to keep the city safe, and on some of the things we have to do to keep it safe. We obviously agree on the need to improve the relationship between police and community. And again, Ed has gone out of his way and put a lot of time into trying to develop some of the relationships to help move that process forward, as have I, obviously. So I think there are some very clear areas of agreement that allow a good dialogue. I think there's also, I agree, when people start to understand each other, when they respect each other's way of thinking in terms of just the way that they analyze the information and compare notes together, that helps get a lot of other things done, and that's what happened here. Yes.
Question for Ed. It seems like the big benefit for your members that the other unions didn't get is the longevity increase. How much is that, and is it uniform on all steps of the experience scale?
It's a benefit to my members, but as I said earlier, we have different needs than the other bargaining units. Other bargaining units had choices. Our choice was somewhat different. So we tried to take care of the needs of our members. Those values will be calculated into, once a sergeant hits top pay, we'll have a significant boost in our salary over the last 7 years period by the time we reach the end of this agreement. So going forward, we'll be at a different base salary from where we wanted to be, and we'll have achieved those goals.
Can either you or Bob talk about the specifics as to where that money's going to, the numbers?
So let me be clear. There were no extra payments in this contract that isn't pattern conforming. Any change in benefits, any modification benefits were paid for out of savings in the contract. But what was agreed to is that the The final 4 or 5 increases apply to the experience schedule, to the longevity schedule. And that is paid for through other benefit changes and contractual provisions that make it completely pattern conforming.
Okay, on topic, looking around. Yes, Sally.
Question for Baldwin. The first increase, the 1%, I know with the Uniform Coalition, it kicked in on the 11th month of the first year. Is this one sooner? It seems like the sergeants get their first 1% sooner.
So with the 8 unions, I think 4 or 5 had the increase kick in on the first day. Yes, in the Superior Officers Coalition, I'm sorry. 4 or 5 had the first increase kick in on the first day of the 11th month, the 12th month. The others had it kick in the first day of the 7th month. And that's a perfect example of what the mayor said, that each contract had specific bargaining and produced savings that were necessary to make those changes. Here, the first increase, it does occur on the first day of the first year, and that's paid for within the contract.
I am reminded of my running joke about Bob Lynn on the first day of the 7th year and the 3rd month on a Tuesday. So I don't know how he does that, but I'm glad he knows how to do that. Yes.
And at the risk of offending the mayor,
You're not alone, so go ahead.
Do you now regret anything you said about him last fall?
Again, I appreciate your effort to take us back into history, but I think the point is this. People are going to have opinions. That's normal. I don't know any place where everyone agrees on everything. I think the point is you voice your opinions and you then try and figure out what you can do with it. And the hope in the job I do is that you're going to find common ground. Sometimes, by the way, you change someone's mind. Sometimes they change your mind. Sometimes you find common ground. Ed said a crucial point, agree to disagree. That's sometimes one of the most mature things people can do who are leaders is say, we agree to disagree on these points, but here's where we can find common ground for our people. So I don't regret anything. I believe that everyone spoke the truth that they felt. But I also honor anyone who can say, even though we have differences, we have commonalities and we want to focus on those commonalities. Yes?
A question then for Mr. Mullins, sort of dovetailing on that. Going forward, when you do have disagreements with the mayor, do you think you'll voice them publicly the way you have in the past, or will you first call him to deliver?
I think at this point that we have a relationship where I can pick a phone up and discuss them and set up a meeting and have a real conversation. If there's ever a time you think we're going into mud wrestling and that happens, well, we'll let you know. But until then, I think that we have an opportunity to have a conversation. And as mature individuals that have a bigger purpose, I think that based on what I know now and the relationship that we've started to work on, that we should be able to work through differences.
I agree.
What do you think prevented you from doing that in the first place, just calling up and kind of hashing it out face to face instead of kind of this back and forth?
I'll just start on that, and then I think the point is, over the years, for those of us who've been in public life a long time, some relationships develop very naturally, just happen to work on a lot of things together. Others, there isn't that organic opportunity to get to know someone. And by the time we were all in here together, in a very busy circumstance, meaning, we come into office, we're building administration. Sometimes it's hard to take the time to stop and build some of the relationships you ideally would like to have. I remind everyone that I think in the first 6 months of last year, a lot of good was happening, a lot of progress was happening in terms of the work of the NYPD, in terms of the relationship between police and community. Some tragedies made the whole situation very difficult for everyone. But I think what has come out of even some of the painful moments is that people finally got a chance to stop and say, wait a minute, we have to have a relationship. We have to understand each other. If we didn't develop it in the past, just in the normal course of business, let's stop and do that now, and let's do it the right way. And that's what happened here. Wait. Rich.
So, Lynn, are you witnessing a kiss and make-up session here?
I'll put my arm around him, but that'll be good enough. Yeah, I think you're witnessing people who have found a way to work together and clearly care deeply for this city and for the good of the people who do the work. And then we'll go to off-topic.
A question again for Sergeant Mullins. You said before that you don't go to birthday parties, you don't talk about conventions. then why did you send that letter last summer? If you just said you don't go to conventions, you don't know about...
Because there are people who do. There are people who do. NYPD cops police these conventions. And we go back to the Republican convention when President Bush had it here. New York City cops were assaulted in the street, beaten with bicycles, sued, had complaints made over them. Do you want to work in that kind of atmosphere every day? Would you invite that into your office? So why should we invite it into ours? I don't agree with the atmosphere that it creates, and I just don't feel that it was beneficial to the job of the working men and women of the NYPD.
Last call on this topic. And by the way, that's another example we can agree to disagree. Okay, off topic. Off topic. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, what's the city's policy, and like, how long do you guys keep emails? You know, the state has a policy where they delete them after 90 days. I was wondering, how long do you guys keep?
I personally don't know, but I'll make sure that our Corporation Counsel and others get you an answer.
Mayor, on the terror investigation, what is your confidence level that the so-called lone wolves or homegrown terrorists that are here in New York have now been apprehended? Do you believe there are more in the city right now?
Look, I think we have to put this into some context. We have a challenge of terrorism in this world that has been deepening over decades. It's not new. I want to remind people, you can go back over much of history and find examples of terrorism of all different kinds. So this is not the first time in human history we've confronted this challenge, but we have a particular challenge now that was growing over decades and now in the form of ISIS presents new and particular threats. That being said, we understand the time we're living in. I've said that in the entire time I will be in office, however long the people choose that to be, this challenge will be front and center that whole time. No one should expect it to go away anytime soon. I pray that with enough good work, the threat can be greatly reduced internationally. But in the short term, this is going to be a part of our lives, and we have to deal with it. So the way we deal with it here in this city is, one, we have the finest police force anywhere in the world and the finest police leader in Commissioner Bratton. Two, we have 1,000 of our men and women of the NYPD focused on counterterrorism activities, which is a huge and appropriate commitment. No other city in this country has anything like that kind of capacity. Three, we not only have a strong working relationship with our federal partners, especially with the FBI, but we have deepened that relationship. I've had a number of conversations with FBI Director Comey, who I think is an outstanding leader, and he is very, very focused on the kind of partnership he needs with New York City and other localities to fight against terror. We understand the federal government's very focused in this fashion. One of the ways we do that is deepening the relationship between the city government and the NYPD together with the communities of this city. This is what the FBI is saying. This is what the Department of Homeland Security is saying. We need to keep deepening the relationship on the ground with communities because that's where information comes from. These individuals who are apprehended are an example. We need people in the community to tell us if they suspect anyone has taken the wrong path. And I think we are doing a good job of deepening those relationships, but there's more to be done. So what I'd say is I am convinced all the right tools are being used and the focus is intense. The challenge with lone wolves, whether they are someone who is self-motivated or someone who is reading a website and determining that they want to take an action suggested on a website, or as I've said, you could parallel, we have another type of lone wolf that's tragic and horrible to consider, and we've seen it in places like Newtown and Columbine. That's not a Muslim-inspired lone wolf. That's another kind of lone wolf that creates a horrible and tragic outcome. No matter how good our police force, there will be individuals that don't appear on the radar screen who could pose a threat to others. That's why we need people who have any idea, any sense that someone may be a threat to report it immediately. Just like we've talked about, if you see something, say something, with a bag left on a subway platform. Equally, if you know someone in your life, if you come across someone who you believe may be either deeply troubled and thinking about violence or may have been inspired to a negative act by an outside organization, we need to know that. Someone who has any information like that has to call NYPD or call 911 immediately and report it. So the better we develop information on the ground, the more we'll be able to get at those situations. But it's a reality that's not going to go away. Our job is to create the strongest possible apparatus. And by the way, in this case, with the great work of the FBI and the cooperation of the NYPD, these individuals were captured before they could do any harm to others. Yes.
What's your opinion on Benjamin Netanyahu addressing Congress? Do you feel like it's a blatantly partisan move, or do you feel like it should happen?
I think it's quite clear that there's been a tradition that foreign leaders are not invited to address Congress in the immediate weeks before their elections. And that is for a good reason. There should be a separation. The Congress of the United States should not involve itself in elections in other countries. So I think it was a mistake by Speaker Boehner to offer that invitation in that time frame and in that particular manner. Any other questions off topic? Going once, going twice. Thank you, everyone.